right, so we are going to be working and kind of looking at how do we work with ranges and cells. And so we'll be working with this worksheet, census.xlsx, or .xls. Good heavens, what does that mean, .xls? No, actually, a .xls file can have macros in it. A .xlsx file can. So what can we tell about this assignment for the fact that it has a .xls? Yeah, this is prior to 2007. I have been using this example since at least 2006. It's a really good example. I like this example. So this is the one we're using. So download that. You might want to save it immediately as an XLSM. In fact, that's what I'll do. I've got it downloaded here. I'm going to open it, and I'm going to save it immediately so I get it into the current format. So back in the early days, you just have an XLS file. Whether it had macros in it or not didn't matter. So you could have any Excel workbook. You just open it, and there could be evil macros in there that would like delete a bunch of data off your computer. And so that's why Microsoft said, we need kind of one that you know for sure is safe. There can't even be macros in it, and that's what the xlsx file is. XLSM says, hey, if you're going to open this, do it at your own risk because there's macros in it. Yeah.
So isn't the XLS limited to 65,000?
Oh yeah, it only has 60. How many? Let's go to the end here. 65,536.
Oh,
yeah. So you have dramatically fewer rows than you do under the newer format, and fewer columns. Only like 256 columns. Now you've got like 16,000 columns. So, yeah. So I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to call this census _ fall 16, and I'm going to save it in xlsm. And you'll notice that it hasn't actually changed the number of rows here because it's the way I opened it. So just for kicks, I'm going to close it and reopen it. And now we've got 1.04 million. Okay, so it turns out this data, I just downloaded this data file from like the United States Census Bureau or something. Somebody look at this data and tell me what we're dealing with here. What? Say something interesting about the say something relevant. It doesn't have to be interesting. Something relevant about the data. You look at this data and say something and go, oh, I get it. There's this. You don't have to be the whole thing, but just tell me something about it. What kind of data is it? What do these numbers mean? What do these things mean up here? It's really terrible data. Wait, one says sex. Oh. Any thoughts? Take a look. You got several tabs here. Can you figure any of this out? Just take a second so you can figure it out.
Population, age.
Okay, so you're just looking at the labels here, and you're seeing population, age. So what do you think?
Probably by CD and saying the population of that CD.
Okay, so you're looking at this number here. Here's the population number. You're looking at this number here, and you're saying that's a population of something. We don't know exactly what kind of population. It's population.
Resident population.
What's that?
Resident population.
What do you mean resident population? I know it's resident population.
As of April 2000. I don't know. That's what it says on the data dicts.
Let's go to the data dictionary. And so if we look at it, so we're working on a data set. So in this first row, I'm seeing pop 0, 1020, 0, 1020. So I come to the data dictionary and I find pop 0, 10, 20. Is this it? Pop 0, 10. Oh, maybe it's 10200. It's just chopped up. Yeah, 10200. So if I come to the data dictionary, then yeah, that's what I see. Here is a description of what those data are. So in that column, it's the resident population between on April 1st, 2000, a complete count. This is census data after all, so we're keeping track of that stuff. Okay, and so I know that that's what these numbers are. So that number right there is the resident population as of April 1st, 2000 something. And so, but where? Where is it from? That's the next question. It's the resident population, but for where? Any thoughts? Okay, so I'm looking right here on row 11. It's the population for what?
Calhoun.
Calhoun County, Alabama. Holy cow, how did you figure that out? So if we look at the county names tab, then what we see here is that there's some number, 0, 1,000, 1001. If I come back to the data, 0, 1,000, 1001. So this is like a county identifier. So if I take this number, 1015, over here to county names, and I find 1015, sure enough, that's talking about Calhoun County, Alabama. So that number right here is total resident population counted in April of the year 2000 in Calhoun County, Alabama. Is this data, would you categorize this data as easy to work with or difficult to work with? It's really difficult to work with. You know, some government administrator said, this is the way we should present the data. You download it this way. Really, the only change I made here to this data set was I gave you a column here that has the county and the state put together into one column. We'll need that here. But other than that, this is just downloaded the way it came from the Census Bureau. And so, you know, they're saying, listen, this is not for the faint of heart. If you're going to deal with this data, you're going to have to know how to work with this data. So over here in the first column, we have an identifier that tells us which county it's for. Or actually, what's this one right here? What's number 1,000? Which county is this? Yeah, it's the whole state of Alabama. And which is this? That's the whole United States of America. So talking about, you want to know the population, 2.8 million. Whatever population measurement that was. Back in 2000. Or maybe it's, 280 million. Yeah, that should be, that's kind of a small, what happened? There was a plague or something happening. 281 million, that sounds better. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I would like to take advantage of VBA. And our whole focus today is working with cells and ranges. So we're going to use this as an example to see some different things that we can do to refer to ranges of data. But in so doing, I would like to do something that's meaningful. I'd like to make a tool that will allow us to say, you know what? Pick a county and show me the data. Pick another county, show me the data so I can compare those two counties side by side on the dimensions that I'm interested in. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's start off just by creating a sheet that we're going to call like this, I'll call it the compare sheet. So I'm creating a new sheet here. I'll change the name to compare. I think I want to put that as the very first sheet. It doesn't really matter, just I'm going to think this is the first sheet and then everything else here is the data that I'm dealing with. And here's what I'd like to do. I would like to put here in column A the names of all the variables, and then in column B, I want to put the values for one particular county. And I want that part to happen automatically. But in terms of having the names of these counties, or the names of these variables in place, let's just go ahead and bring that in. And so I'm going to come to my data dictionary, and I'm just going to copy column B. And I'm going to paste that right onto column A. And I don't want item description, but I want a couple of blank lines up there will be good. So now on my compare sheet, I've got the names of all of the variables. So now when I bring the data in for just one county, I'll be able to lay that data right in here, and then I can just look at it. I can see this all together. Oh, the resident population under 18 years, the percent. Oh, it's right there. And so that's the idea. So we need some way to be able to pick a county. Any thoughts on how we should do that? So the user of this sheet is going to say, I want to pick a county. How are we going to do it? Okay, there's a drop-down. We do a drop-down. There's two ways to do a drop-down list in Excel, at least on a worksheet that I know of. Well, I think of three. Kind of two main ones. One of them is called data validation. I can send data validation. Yeah. Come over here and come to my data tab, and there's something here about data validation. I can remember where it is. Data validation right here.
You have to highlight it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to do this, but I'm just telling you this is one way. Under data validation, the idea is I'm going to put a value into this cell, but the only values allowed to be chosen for this cell come from a list. So we can put the whole list there, choose one of these, that's the value that you put there. That would work. It'd be a little more effort than the way that we're going to take. So So here's the other way that we can do it. And this one I wouldn't expect you to know yet. I'm going to come to my developer tab, because it's on the developer tab. You probably didn't even have a developer tab 2 weeks ago. So on the developer tab, I'm going to come right here, there's a little toolbox. There's a group called controls. There's a toolbox right here. It looks like a little toolbox, a screwdriver, and a wrench here. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to give me several tools. In fact, there's a lot of overlap between this first group called form controls and the second group called ActiveX controls. But I'm going to choose this one right here. This is the combo box in the form control. Turns out the form control is a little bit easier to configure. Looks a little nicer too. It's not as powerful, but it'll do everything we need to for this example. So I'm going to select the form control, and then I'm just going to draw that combo box right here into this kind of area on A1 and A2. Got a combo box. I can kind of drag that around and put it wherever I want to. It doesn't have to just be in one cell and span cells to be big. Okay, so far so good? Now, I've got to configure this control, so I'm going to right-click it and choose Format Control. And there are two things that I've got to tell it here. I've got to tell it, number one, where to get the list. And number two, I've got to give it some way to tell me which one I've chosen from the list. So those are the two things we'll do. So Format Control. And the input range says where we're going to get the list. So I'll click over here on Input Range, and I'm going to come to County Names, and I'm going to select this whole set of data here. I don't want the whole column, just the data. So start in the first cell, do Shift Control down arrow, and that takes that whole set of counties. So that just tells that's what you should be able to choose from in the drop-down. Now under Cell Link, I'm going to tell it, where is this control, this combo box, going to communicate to me as the developer, going to communicate to me which one the user has chosen. And I'm just going to put that right on A1. I'm going to pick a cell to put the value that was chosen. And so I'll just choose A1 here, and that'll be fine. I could also change how many lines drop down, if 8's not enough, 8 is enough. That was actually a television show in the 1970s, 8 is enough. I guess the guys at Microsoft used to like that show, but I think 20 is enough, so we'll get a little more here. Ooh, wait a minute, and if you want, you can have 3D shading. I'm going to leave 3D shading on. Okay, now before this will work, I got to click off of the combo box, and now I can click on that combo box, and it will give me that whole list. And I can come right down here to Kansas, somewhere here in Kansas. Let me find the K's. I will show you my very favorite county in the whole of the United States. That's Kentucky. There's Kansas. Getting closer. Too far. There it is. Gov, Kansas. That's the county I was named after. Actually, my great-great-great-great-grandfather was named after Gov County, Kansas, but kind of stuck. Okay. So it has, I chose Gov, Kansas, and it put 936. What is 936? Any thoughts?
How many are above it?
It's not how many are above it. That's really close.
The row?
It's not the row the data comes from, although it happens to be the same as the row number, but it's a coincidence that it's the same in this case. Yeah, it's actually one more than how many are above it. It's the number in the list. So that is the 936th entry in this list. So if I go all the way up to the very first one, then it's number 1. You know what I've never tried? What if I do it backwards? I don't think this will do anything. 936. Oh, it does! I can just type 936 in there and go right back to Gov County, Kansas. Fancy. Okay, so that's going to give me some information to say, okay, that is the 936th one in this list. Go ahead.
I just wonder if there's a way to make the combo box searchable. So it's not just
Oh yeah, what if I just want to be able to come in here and start typing?
yeah.
Yeah, this combo box is not going to do it. Maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if the other one does, right? This one's more advanced down here. ActiveX control. Don't try that. Don't try it here today in class because it behaves very differently in terms of how you configure it. But this one might be searchable. We can try it and find out. Okay. So far, so good. Now I'm set up. The user now can choose this thing here. Now I need some way to be able to convert this 936 to say here Kansas, Gov, and then put in a bunch of data. That's what we want to do. And that's going to take VBA, so let's get down to it, shall we? Alt F11, we'll open up the Visual Basic Editor. Ooh, I think I probably have, what I have going on here is probably my funcres add-in. What is that? All right, do I have any modules yet in this project? Aha, it's a trick question. I do. It turns out there is one module for every worksheet and one module for the workbook itself. So I've got a bunch of modules here. Do I want any of those modules? No, those are the special modules. We might use them later, but we want a general module, and there are no general modules, and so we'll go ahead and insert module to give us a place to write our code. Insert module, we've got a code going on, we've got a module place to write the code. Now, we're going to write a sub procedure. So, keyword that starts is what? Sub. All right.
Why does yours start with option explicit and ours doesn't pop up?
Option explicit. How many of you have option explicit already showing? How many of you say no option explicit at the time? Let's take a little option explicit detour for just a moment. Ooh, actually, it's kind of early to do this. Option explicit says if you're going to use a variable, we haven't really talked about variables yet, that's coming up. You have to declare it. You must explicitly declare your variables before you can use them. It's a really good idea to have option explicit at the top. One of the hardest things to debug is a misspelled variable name. If you have option explicit at the top, it'll tell you haven't declared this variable, you're not allowed to use it. So that's nice. But let's go ahead and make a couple of changes then, so they're all kind of configured the same way. This is how I prefer to have the editor configured. I'm going to come to Tools, and then Options. Tools, Options. That'll give me some ways to configure this editor. So you probably looks like this. You've got auto syntax check on and no require variable declaration. You're just going to reverse those first two. You're going to turn off the auto syntax check. It'll still check your syntax. It just won't put up a message box when you make an error. Believe me, folks, you're going to make lots of mistakes. You don't really want the editor to tell you, hey, you made a mistake. Hey, you made a mistake. Hey, you made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. It's red for crying out loud. You don't have to tell me. And what's worse is like if you just hit enter, like you're going down, you're hitting enter or something, the default on that dialog box is to open up the help system, which is going to be some call to a Microsoft web page that takes about 10 seconds to open and is of no help whatsoever. And so you just don't want that. And then I'm going to turn require variable declaration on. What that will do is the next time I create a module, it'll put option explicit at the top. And if you really want it there now and you've already created the module, just type it in. You can type it in. It's okay. It's really doing nothing more than saying when I create a module, put option explicit. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and put in the name of the sub procedure. So we're going to be using this to get county data. So why don't we call it get county data? That's a great name. Get county data. Get county data. Some people prefer to use these all lowercase and put underscores. That's okay. It doesn't really matter to me. I like using camel case, which is capital letters of adjacent words. And the reason is that when I'm typing here in VBA, I'll type this in all lowercase, get county data. I have to refer to it from some other place. And when I leave the line, if the editor can identify it, it goes, oh yeah, I recognize that, and it matches the capitalization the way that it was declared. And so what that does, it allows me to see automatically, right, as soon as I leave that line, I go, I spelled it right. The spelling and typing are both a problem for me. And so getting that little cue is helpful. Although some people really prefer using the underscore between them. You can really do it any way you want. Okay. So now, so step one, what I would like to do is I would like to just put in here, the data is going to start here in column 3, or in row 3, but I would like to put here the county, I want to put the state that it's from and the county. So if I look over here on my county names page, and we come to, what was it, 936? Here's Gov County. So here in column D, we used to fill the combo box, but over here in B and C, we actually have the independent values. And so I'm going to use that to get there. So how do I do it, folks? here's what I've got. Somewhere. I've got a 936, and I've got to convert that to Kansas, or KS, and Gov. Any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you said it was the row number that's on +1, right? The number above the number of, I guess you know, above it, +1.
So this is the number this is the 936th entry in this combo box. Good news is there's no header on my county names. If I come right up here, it starts off with kind of the first entry. And so that number is going to match exactly to the row that I'm after here. So I can just use that to pick it up. So let's take a look at one of the ways that we can refer to a range, refer to a cell. So Alt F11. So I'll refer to the cell that I want to work in. Sheets. Here, folks, I'll tell you what. Anytime I've got multiple sheets that I'm like pulling data from one place and putting it somewhere else, and this one I'm going to have 3 of them that I'm working with, every time I refer to a cell, I want to be really clear that I know which sheet I'm talking about. So I'm not going to rely. If I don't tell it which sheet, I just say go to this range, which sheet does it assume? Yeah, the active sheet. That'd be pretty good. Except I'm not even really sure which sheet's going to be active when this stuff runs. And so I'm going to fully qualify the paths to my ranges that I want to use. Now, if I was doing something involving multiple workbooks, I might actually want to tell it which workbook, and then which sheet, and then which cell. But we're just going to assume just one workbook. We'll at least assume that this is the active workbook, and so we'll leave that off. So I'm going to say sheets. Out of all of the sheets, the one named compare, that's the sheet I just created. And I'm going to now refer to a particular range. Here's the simplest way. Range, and then in parentheses and in quotes, I'm going to give it a string that tells it which range I want. This is going to be range B1. This then is going to refer to a particular cell. Which cell does it refer to? It refers to that cell right there. I've got a bunch of cells numbered B1. I've got one on each of my sheets, but I've told it specifically which sheet I'm interested in, and now range B1. Now, that is a reference to the object itself. How many properties does this object have? Yeah, that's the technical term, a lot. You know, or a potload would also be acceptable answer. If you're getting ready for the test, those would be both acceptable answers. And so here's the thing. This is an object. It's not a property, and I want to get down to a particular property. I am trying to set one property of that object. And what property do I want to set? The value. It turns out if I set the formula property, put a value in it, it would also go to like some other things I could do. In fact, here's a little thing. I hesitate to even tell this to you. Most objects have a default property. If I refer to the object and don't specify a property, it'll go, oh, you must have meant this property. And it turns out, can you guess what the default property is for a range? It's the value. So you guys leave that part out. Don't do that. Just actually say the property. Don't stop with the object, because it actually looks really weird, at least to me, to say, I'm going to set this whole object equal to something. No. I'm setting one of the properties of the object equal to something. You can see it spelled all the way out. So range B1 dot value is going to be equal to something. And so this is one of the ways that we can refer to a particular range. I know we've seen that before, so it's not groundbreaking. So now let's use a different way to refer to a cell on the county names sheet. Sheets. And the sheet I'm after is county names. Now instead of doing range, we could do it with range too, but we're going to use cells. Cells then, I give it 2 values. I give it a row number and a column number, or I can give it a column letter. So what's the row number I want? Let me start by putting in the actual value I'm after, 936. We're going to modify that to make it more general in just a second. Which column do I want? I don't remember. It's the one that's got the county in it. So I'm going to come back to county names. Yeah, it's column C. No, D has county name and a state name. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I want the state name, not the county name. Yeah, so the state I want to be on top. So if the answer is not wrong, the question was wrong. That little trick won't work on the exam. Okay, so if I can either put in here 3 or, in quotes, C. All right, and so that should get me set up. Before you ask the question, I want to run this and just see that it works. Run this, come back to the compare, and that should have put Kansas up here at the top. Now, we've got a couple problems with it. I mean, it's right now it's always going to put Kansas. It's always looking at that row. We're going to make that more general here in just a second. Question?
Is it case sensitive, the column?
Is the column case sensitive? The answer is no. Lowercase or uppercase, it's just fine. All right. So now I've got to do something here that says, and this is where cells is really nice as opposed to range, is because this thing is designed just to take a number. And I've got a number, right? I've got a number right here. In fact, I could just plug in, what's the reference to this number? This is, it's long. It's sheets compare range A1. I could plug that in. I'm going to put it down here first. Let me just do a print of sheets compare range A1 dot value. And it prints it. That's the 936 that I'm after. So this expression right here evaluates to 936, whatever is in A1. Could I just take that and paste it right in here where the 936 is? I totally could do that, and this line would be even more hideous than it already is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break that into 2 steps. I know we haven't really talked about variables yet, but let's declare a variable. I'm going to call this, I want to call it row. I'm going to call it county. County row is probably a better word for it. County, I'll call it county row. It's a little bit longer than I want it to be, but county row. County row. Okay, and then before I get to this line, I'm going to give that variable a value. County row equals, and then I will put in this expression. And so now instead of 936, what will I put here? County row. Okay, let's put a comment in here. Save the selected county variable. And now this next line is going to copy the state to the compare sheet. All right, in-class exercise. Copy the, now do the next row. That's going to, when we run this now, it's going to put in the county. Now I put in the state. I want you to put in the county. Go. It's really similar to this. Let's make a couple of changes. But should be able to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what that line would be. It's going to be really similar to the line that I have right here. So I'm just going to copy it down. But now instead of writing into B1, I'm going to write to B2. I'm going to be reading from the same row, just a different column. The column I want is column number B. Column number B. So now if I run this, it should, just by clicking on the green play button here, it should bring in the name of the county as well as the state abbreviation of the county. Okay. Questions? Yes?
So just to confirm something in my mind, when you made county row, whatever it's called?
Variable.
A variable, yeah. When I've seen that done before, they put it in as like dim county row
as something, yeah. We just haven't talked about the data, the variable data types yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to do that in, I don't know, 3 or 4 days from now.
Okay.
And then we'll do that. So if we don't tell it which type, it gets a default type.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
There's a type that it's going to be used. We'll talk about that type later.
Okay.
Kind of simplify this as much as possible because that's not what we're focusing on. Okay. So now, this next part is going to get a little difficult. So our next step is, we got to find the right set of data. Ooh, it's way down here. Let's see, Control G. Go to A, what was it, 936? Okay, so is this the data that we're after? Let's just, remember this first column is the identifier of the county. So let me go back and take a look at my county names and find out the identifier. So the identifier here is 20063. And over here on row 936, it's 20061. What's the problem? Oh wait, 20063 is right here. This is the row that I want. What's going on here? It's got a column header. These columns have headers, whereas the other ones didn't. So all the data that actually have the values I'm after, they're offset by 1. Well, that's okay. We can work with that. We just have to realize that that's what we're doing. Okay, so remember, in the assignment statement, got this equal sign here, I am taking what is on the right-hand side, and I am putting it on what's on the left-hand side. So look at whatever's over here, put it over here, and so forth. So next, what I want to do is I want to take this value, and I want to put it right here. And then on the next row down, or the next row down, I want to put the data from the next column over. Next row down is the data from the next column over. How am I going to do this? If you were doing this just in Excel, how would you do it? Yeah, copy, transpose. That's the approach that we're going to take here as well. It turns out that once we get familiar with loops, we can write a loop that says, read here, right here, read here, right here, read here, right here, and kind of goes across. But let's go ahead and take a copy and transpose approach. So the first thing we have to do is we have to identify the range that we want to copy. Now, when you do a copy and transpose, how do you identify the range you want to copy? You just go select it. That's how it knows what you're talking about. Wait, we gotta tell it in code which range we're talking about. So let's figure out how are we going to write a statement that gets at the range that we want to copy. In fact, if I was to think about the address that I'm after, I'm going to write it right here just for my reference. That's going to be column A, row number, how is this? A3, 937 through, what column does this data end on? CE 937. I got to figure that out some way. I got to get a reference to that range. There's several ways we can do it. Well, one is this. Let's take a look at this one. Print range. In fact, just while we're working here, well, I'll just go ahead and that's off the data set sheet. So print sheet. No. Rather than type it in here, just for simplicity, I'm going to come back and select the data sheet. So that's my active range, my active sheet. I'm just going to refer to the range. Range. And I could actually just plug this whole expression in as the range I'm talking about. So far, I don't think we've done this. The only thing we've ever used range for is refer to a particular cell. But I can do a whole range of cells. It's called the range property. I can do a whole range just referring to that. So what I'm saying is I don't want to print the value of this range. I want to print the address of this range. And that should tell me, it really is talking A937 to CE 937. So one approach that I could have is just to figure out, knowing what I know here, to kind of build a string, a collection of characters that evaluates that way. So we take that approach. It's pretty simple here. So if I was trying to compose this, I could do it like this. I know it's going to start in column A. So we print what I'm composing here. A. And then I can concatenate it on, just for now, let me do this in kind of baby steps here, 937. Concatenated with, in quotes, a colon. colon CE, then concatenate on a 937. And so if I run that, that will give me that address. But now I've separated out the numeric portion from the rest of the string portion. Using what I have up here, how can I say 937 when it's supposed to be 937? How do I do it? Yeah, just county row plus 1. So I can just replace these county row with, or that 937 with county row plus 1. That's that one, the county row plus 1. Now, if I try to run this right now, it has no idea what county row is, because county row doesn't have a value unless this procedure is actually running. So I could get this running just by putting a breakpoint here and running it. So now with my yellow insertion point, that program is run, and this procedure is paused right here. So county row has a value right now, so I should be able to print this while that's in break mode. And I should be able to see that value being counted. So this is one approach. It's kind of an ugly approach. It's one of many ways that we can go about doing this. Put a comment here and just kind of bring that into the code as one way to refer to it. One way to kind of build up the reference to a range. Okay, how are we doing on this so far, folks? How many of you are going, that's terrible. That just is, I can't believe we have to do that. Well, we don't really have to do that. That's just one way. I'm giving you the straw man argument. You don't have to do it this way. But what this shows is that we can do some very complex ranges this way. Let me do this just so we can see this. Let me just identify a range. Let's say I want just A1 dot select. This is going to select A1, there it is. But I could also say, you know what, I want to select A1 through A4. Run that, and it selects that range. But watch this. I can do A1 and A4, and it selects just those two. Or I can do A1 and A4, comma, and A6 through A10. Is it going to be able to handle that all in one statement? Sure. So I can kind of compose these long strings that identify multi-cell, discontiguous ranges, and say that's the range I'm talking about. I can change all the properties, I can change the background color of all those cells just by saying here, dot interior, dot pattern color, not pattern color, color index equals 6. This might help you on the homework, by the way. And that then just changes all those properties of that particular range that I've identified. Okay. So one approach is this kind of complex string that identifies the range that I have. There's another way to do this. Another way is another form of the range property. So one form of the range property, I give it a string that identifies the range I'm talking about. There's another way. The other way is to give it two strings. Well, watch this. I'm just going to do a string here, A1, comma, outside of the parentheses, A16. And I'm going to select. Range A1, oh, A16 is in quotes. So up here, let's leave this in as range. Up here, when I'm referring to a range this way, I am giving it one string. So even though this string is built up of several other parts concatenated together, it is still a single string. It's one argument I'm sending to the property. Here, I've got this comma here. I'm saying it this string and this string. So the range property says, you know, when you give me two strings, it's going to be upper left-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, and I want all the cells between it. It's one block, contiguous, all the cells in that area. Here's the other thing. It doesn't have to be a string. It can be another reference to a cell. So right here, instead of starting at A1, I will start from the active cell. A-C-T-I-B-E-C. Oh, thank you. And so, kind of the magical part here is that when I give it two arguments, it can either be strings. That's kind of the same way we did just with one argument, or they can be references to other ranges itself. Whew, yeah.
So we can do horizontal and.
Yeah, horizontal and vertical. Doesn't matter. You give it two cells. In fact, it doesn't even have to be in order. I could reverse the order of this. It would still work the same way. It says I got one cell here that's one end, the other cell here that's the other end, give me all the cells between. It doesn't matter the order you put it. Yeah, so we could change this to B16, and then you can see it's doing a multi-column range. Yep.
Sorry, so that the active cell comma with the B16 is saying everything between active cell and B16?
Yeah, and the whole point here is that this doesn't have to be this doesn't have to be a string. This is just a collection of characters. This is a reference to an object. This is a reference to a whole object, not just a string.
How would you make that like a separated range, non-contiguous? Because like when you do comma with string, it has like two separate cells there.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
Okay.
Yeah, the question is, can we do something with this that says, non-contiguous, using references to other objects? Oh, yeah, you can. You really want to see it? I'll show it. You ready? Okay. Stand by. So let's say these are the ones I want. Let's say I want A1, A3, A5. So let's do it. Range A1, comma, range. As many of these as I want. A1, A3, A5, 7, 9. Okay. Now, if I just try to run this, .select, it would understand this part, this range, A9.select, but the whole rest of this would be confusing. But there is a statement. Watch this. All I have to say is union. Union, and then I can give it up to 30 ranges. What if I want more than 30 ranges? Union a bunch together, and then union that on the inside. Yeah, you really can. Union these, comma, union these. Comma or .select, and then it selects those as discontinuous. So this union, I'm not even sure where it comes from. It's got to be a method of the application. Yeah. So I don't think we talked about the application object. We talked about the workbook object, a worksheet object. The application object is Excel itself, and so kind of the stuff that's implemented about VBA inside of Excel, one of them is this union method. You give it a potload of ranges, and it gives you back a range that is just the union of those. All right. Ooh, that one was kind of. Let's go ahead. I'm going to put that up here as a comment up here in the. Just so we can see some different ways to refer to ranges. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I want to refer to the range that I'm going to be copying the values from. And I'm going to use it using this range method. Range. And then I'm going to put a comma, so I'm going to have two. I'm going to put in the starting cell and the ending cell, but I got to calculate what that is. Now here's the trick. Here's the trick, and it's something that's a little bit confusing to students when we're first starting. Now, I want to say that this range is on a particular sheet. And so, the way we've done it before is we've said, some sheet.range, b1.value. So the temptation is to put out here sheet1.range, and then to put just like, range b1, range b2 in here. But what we have to do is we just say range by itself, and on the inside here, we tell it the sheet that we're talking about. We'll have that in that way in just a second. There was a question here.
Yeah, I'm confused at how sometimes you can use the comma and it understands that you're trying to gather a range, or sometimes you use the colon and it also gathers an entire range. Like how you break up the discontinuous of it.
Yeah. So the trick is when I'm using the comma. Oh, I see what you're saying. When I use the comma.
You use the comma inside of the active cell B16.
Yeah, right here. No, right here. Let's do that one again. let's look at it this way. Let's do B15 and B16. Kind of two ways, or B14 and B16. B14, select. And in fact, let's take this one and let's do it the same way, except we're going to give it as one string argument. So here, let's first see what this does differently. Let me get rid of the color here. I might not be able to run this while I have the syntax area. So I'm going to run this one here, and that is going to select. Let's change these to change them to A, so we select that. Okay, so this one, I got A14 to A16, and it takes everything between them. This one is going to take only those two cells. They look almost exactly the same. What's the difference? What's the big difference here? Well, yeah, it's that we've got quotes in here, but what that means is that here, I am passing it a single string. I'm giving it one value that says select this range. And the way I refer to a multi-cell discontiguous range inside of Excel is with commas between the cells that I want to refer to. The way I turn that into a continuous range, just inside of Excel, kind of one argument, is with a colon. So if I'm going to give it just a string that says, here's the range that I want, the colon between the two, inside that string, says start here, end here. The comma says this one and this one. Here, now when I use the range property and I give it two separate ranges, it's always saying, give me everything between these two. If I want just two, I gotta do it this way, or I can use union to take just those two. Okay, go ahead.
Well, and the advantage to using the top with the two quotes is that you can put like active cell when you could do that in the bottom.
Yeah, that's right. So here, if I'm going to refer to a range all as one string, then I've got to do this hideous thing up here, where I'm building this whole string together. Whereas, if I'm already kind of working, I've got these two, I've got references to these two cells in one way or another. I can just say, this cell to this cell, give me everything between. So let's take a look at that one. So did I start? Oh, I started up here. Range. Now I'm going to start at. I'm going to give it a reference to a particular cell here. So sheets. What sheet do I want? It's called data. What's it called? Data set. Cells. I want some particular row and some particular column. This is going to start in column 1. So I'm going to put the comma 1 in there. This other comma out here is separating my next range that I'm going to put in here. So what do I want to put in here for the starting row? County row plus 1. Now, I got to figure out how am I going to get to the last row, the last column in this data set. If you were doing it in Excel, how would you do it? Yeah, you probably go Control-Shift right arrow. You get right here, you Control-Shift right arrow, and you take that data. That will work really well if there's no blanks. What if there's blanks? It turns out in this data set there's no blanks. But what if there's blanks? Go to the end and come back. Let's take that approach. In fact, let's do this in kind of 2 steps. So I'm going to declare another variable here. I'm going to call this calls. This is the number of columns as, not as anything. Another variable. Here, just before I use it, let's go ahead and give it a value. Calls equals sheets. Which sheet do I want? Data set. Which cell do I want? Row number 1. Column we'll get to in just a second. So all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out where this data ends. And the idea is to come all the way out here to the left and then do a Control left arrow. All the way to the right. Do a Control left arrow until I bump into a value here. Why do I want to use row number 1? If I'm worried about having missing data, why row number 1? It's the header. The header's not missing. So I say, well, we don't really know what this column is, but we're going to give you some data for it anyway. So the header's going to be there. So all I'm trying to do is figure out the right column here. So I'm going to pick row number 1 because I know there's going to be a value there. Now the column that I want is the very last column. How do I say the very last column? Columns.count. It'll just tell me. That gives me the count of all the columns. So 1,000 or 16,384. So that is going to give me, this is going to refer to the very last cell in the first column. I don't want that one. Dot n xl to left dot column. I'm just going to bring this down to the immediate window and print it just so I can see that it works. And that should give me a number. It's not really big. Okay, so now this whole value, this is going to figure out what's the last column that's got the data in. That's great. I'm going to store that in this variable calls. And so I'm going to use that as my second cell in this range. So this is going to look something really similar to what I have here. I'm going to start in the first column. Which column is it going to end in? Calls. So this says, look at the sheet called data set, and the cells that I want there, whatever my county row that I'm interested in, and which column do I mean? That last column. Dot column.
Can you walk through what that previous line says? It's going to the data.
This line right here?
It's going to the data set sheet, going to the first row to the very end, the column count, right?
Let me go ahead.
Oh, it's going to the end of the worksheet.
Let me go ahead and talk through it,
Okay.
and then we'll see it again. So this whole statement I have right here is referring to a particular cell, one cell. Let's kind of follow it through. This first part says, hey, we're going to be talking about a cell on the data set sheet. Well, we're talking about the data set sheet, and from there, we're calling the cells method. The cells method says, give me a row number and a column number. Row number I want is number 1, so I'll be on row number 1. I've now narrowed it down. And this then is putting in whatever columns.count gives me. Columns.count is just the number of
Very last.
it's the number of columns on that sheet. So that's just like putting 16,384 right here. This is that column in the way upper right-hand corner of the worksheet.
Okay.
Now that's not the cell I want. From there, it's going to refer to that cell, and then I'm going to call the end method of that cell and tell it which way I want to go, left. And I do that by saying xl to left. So that's equivalent to being out here, hitting Control left arrow. That's the cell it's going to refer to. And so up to this point, I am referring to that cell. And then I'm asking for a property of that cell, just the column number that it's in. I'm going to save that here. So now, down here when I say I want to identify a range by referring to two cells, one of them is the row I want, column 1, is where it starts. The second range is the row I want, column calls, because I figured out what my last column is. In this data set, because there's no missing data, we could have said, start in row 1, column 1, and do XL, or do XL to right. A little bit simpler. In fact, because we have column labels there, we know that would have worked as well. But I want you to get you familiar with it. It's a little more complex to go to the end and come back. But that's the one that really says that's the end of the data. There might be some missing values in here, but that's the end of the data. All right, so this is just going to say refer to that particular range and copy it. So I'll put a comment here, copy the data from the data set sheet. Now it turns out, this is just a little warning here, folks. I'm doing something that's a little bit cheaty here. I'm doing something I would prefer that you don't do once you've learned some more things. Here, I'm saying I'm going to use the clipboard. I'm going to say, yeah, copy this and paste it. But as a developer, application, you really should avoid using the clipboard because that clipboard belongs to the user. I mean, think about this. When you press Control-C to put something on a clipboard, you expect it to be there the next time you go and paste. It could be a couple of days later, it should still be there, paste. In this case, whatever the user has put on the clipboard, as soon as I run this line right here, it's gone. I just replaced whatever the user had on there with what I just copied. So the warning here is this is a practice that you probably should avoid, but we don't know enough to avoid it yet. So for what we know so far, this is the way it's going to get us. Yeah.
Shouldn't you also avoid it because it's harder for the computer to process it when it's actually copying and pasting as opposed to like referencing cells?
So yeah, if it's just a single cell, it's going to be dramatically easier for it to just refer to it. But it turns out I do not know a faster way to do what we're about to do, especially with large amounts of data. The way to avoid using the clipboard is that if the ranges are the same shape, in other words, they're the same number of rows, the same number of columns, I can just refer to one and say set the values of that one equal to this one. But because one of them is switched, one's vertical and one's horizontal, I can't just say set the value of one equal to the other. I got to copy it and then transpose it. Or I got to go one cell at a time. Copy this cell, put it here. Copy this cell, put it here. Copy this cell, put it here. That's going to be long. So this is the unfortunate situation where using the clipboard is going to be faster. Although we probably should use a slower way because that's the user's clipboard. And there may be some other faster ways that I'm just not very familiar with. Okay, so that's going to put those on the clipboard. Now we just got to do a paste special and transpose. But we've got to refer to the range. Oh no, because paste, this will be easy. Because I can paste, when I do a paste transpose, I just got to tell it where to start. I don't have to tell it the whole range that I want to put it into, just put it where to start. So that's going to be easy. So sheets, what sheet do we want? We're putting the data onto the compare sheet. Now we've got to get to a particular cell. You know, there's another way that I have never ever used. I saw it once. Let me see if it works. Let me see if I remember it enough to see that it works. It was, when I first saw it, I thought, how could that possibly work? Yeah, I'm not sure how to refer to it with a particular. See that? That's a strange syntax. It's not even a string in brackets, and that refers to that particular cell. I'm not quite sure how to get to the right sheet of this, though. Oh, active sheet dot. So, did I just have it spelled wrong?
I think you just missed the dot.
Sheets. Name of the sheet I want is compare. Yeah, okay. So here's yet another way to refer to the sheet. This is when what we're saying is I know exactly what that value is going to be, and it's not going to change through code. I'm not going to have to compose a string to make it. You just use this syntax to refer directly to it. Sheets compare dot, and then in brackets, and not even quotes, I put the cell that I want, B3. Dot paste special. Now, I'm not getting IntelliSense help here, which is a little bit disturbing for me. Because I don't really know what all the arguments are for paste special. In this case, I'm going to try to use a simpler expression that gets me to a range, something that I think the editor might understand. Active cell. Dot paste special. So here's the thing, is that the interpreter has to be able to look at what I'm talking about and figure out, oh, you're talking about a range. And for whatever, not the interpreter, the editor has to be able to look at that. And for whatever reason, the guys that wrote the editor, they're looking at this, they're going, we don't know what you're talking about. But if I come down here, active cell.paste special, and here, this is just a trick that I'm using to get my IntelliSense help active. Now when I hit space, it's going to give me the arguments that I need. You see this last one here, transpose? That's the one I'm after. It's just true or false. I got to tell it, I want this thing to transpose. And so it's going to be transpose is true. This is a way that I can use a named argument to give the name of the argument, transpose.
Sorry, how do you know it's true or false?
How did I know it was true or false? Practice. I did not read that. There's nothing there that I read that told me it was true or false.
Okay.
In fact, I think really because I recorded myself at one point doing transpose paste. And it just came up and said, transpose colon equals true. Why the colon equals? because it's not an assignment statement. Up here, this assignment statement, we're saying take this value and put it into this property. Here I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to give you the name of the argument I'm passing to this method is transpose, and I want that to be true. Otherwise, if I want to avoid the name, I can just put commas in. Skip that one, skip this one, skip this one, and then put true. Which one do you like better? You like the commas better, go ahead. 3 commas, true. We'll do the same thing as transpose colon equals true. So the difference is that if I want to, these are all optional properties. I don't have to supply a value or optional attribute parameters. I don't have to supply an argument to them. So I can just skip them with the comma, or I could say, you know what? The one that's named transpose is going to take on the value of true. Whew, seems like a lot of work to get here. That's it, folks. That should do it. If I run that, that should bring in the data. Let me just check and I'll take your question. Brought in data. Go ahead.
Are the parentheses optional?
Are the parentheses optional? What parentheses?
Around when you do paste special, usually you open a parenthesis.
Oh, put parentheses here
Yeah.
and close them here. That's really a complex answer. I don't want to answer it yet. They're not just optional. We could put them here and it would work, I think. No, it won't work. There's a whole set of rules about when you use them and when you don't use them. It's way more complex than I want to talk about today. Yep.
So you're switching up the order.
I am assuming that the order in which I pull these values, I look here to here, that these are in the same order horizontally as in my data dictionary, they're presented vertically. I'm not assuming that. I have verified that, but I did that before we came here. That's exactly right. If I didn't know that these were in the same order, we couldn't just say take that block and paste it here. We have to do something much more sophisticated. Find the one with this label, find that label over here, put it. Here's the next label, find it, put it. Find it, put it. That's not, for the second week of class. We could do that later in class, but so you're right. This only works because we know those are in the same order.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to ask because I know you just explained it, but can you explain transpose again and what that's doing?
The idea of transpose, or why it's here with a colon equals.
The idea of transpose. I get the colon equals, but what transpose is doing.
So transpose is saying we're doing this paste special. And there's lots of things we can do. We can paste just the values, we can paste the formatting, or we can paste it transposed. So we copied it horizontally, and when we paste with the transpose, it says move it down. Okay, folks, while we're here, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and, this thing is kind of wide here, so let's go ahead and collapse this column down to auto fit. That's not too bad, so we're done. We're done here. Let's just say sheet we want is compare. Sheets compare. Dot columns. C-O-L-U-M-S. Columns 2. Dot autofit. Let's do one more thing. So instead of running this by having to come over here and click play, I want this to run automatically as soon as someone chooses one of the counties here. Watch this. I'm going to right-click the combo box. And one of my options is assign macro. I can format the control, or I can assign the macro. I want to assign a macro. I only got one. It's called get count. It's called get count data. Oops. Oh well. Now I'll click off of it, and now I'm going to pick like Graham County. And bingo. As soon as I make the change, it executes that procedure that I bound to this dropdown. That's pretty good. Okay. Wow. We spent almost the whole class period just getting the first column in. Was there a question over here?
Can you repeat that?
Or what I did, yeah. So to be able to make this automatically run this macro when it changes, I right-click and choose Assign Macro. And then I pick the macro that I want it to run. Now, depending on what kind of thing I put, I can put a button on on the sheet, and then if I assign a macro to that, it runs when the button gets clicked. In this one, it doesn't run when the combo gets clicked. It runs when the combo gets changed. Yeah, when the value changes, which is nice. That's when I want it to run, since I got a new value. So next step on this, folks, is I really want to be able to do more than one column. Oh my gosh, this just got so much more complicated. I want to be able to add, I want to hit the next one. I don't want it to replace this one. I want it to put 2 up so I can compare 2 side by side. After all, the sheet's called compare. I want to be able to see 2. Oh man. Does this stuff all now just get that much more complex? Because now I don't know for sure that it's going to go into column 2 or B3 is where the data is going. I gotta go find which column it is and add it in. Unless there's a shortcut. Do you think of a shortcut? How can I add this in such a way that my existing code would work? Yeah. Yeah, not a row, a column. Yeah, this would be great. My data always puts it right here in column B. So if I start off just by saying insert a column, the rest of the stuff's going to work. Look at this. I've already got sheets, compare column 2. That's what I want. I'll copy that. And I'm going to come right up to the very top. The very first thing I'm going to do, dot insert. Bingo. I'll go back so you can see the code. I just got to show you that it works. Oh, man! In fact, I can compare that to all of Kansas, right? I can just bring it here and say, let me find, where does Kansas start? Kansas State. Here's Kansas, the whole state of Kansas, and then compare their other counties. That's all I did. Oh! A couple minutes ago, I thought we were going to go late. Now we're done 2 minutes early. Questions? All right, homework due tonight. How many of you successfully completed it? Most of you. Okay, great. All right, what is today? Today's Wednesday. I'll see you next week, my children. Have a good weekend, and I will. I'll see some of you in office hours, I guess, working on that project because we have the project due Monday night. 2 submissions. The big deal about the project, the big difference between the project and the homework and the project is
On your own.
On your own. Yeah, this is where you really learn this stuff. All right, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.